This Machariel has a very special place in my fleet. This is my oldest ship, and it's also my first faction battleship. This ship was built in total secrecy in my old corporation. It was built right after Tier 8 and faction battleships were released, so it might be one of the oldest Machariels still in service, and I tried to keep this ship safe. I have so many good memories with the Machariel, and hopefully I will make a lot more good memories with this ship. Now let's go to the trait description. Roll bonus plus 50% warp speed, plus 50% warp acceleration, plus 5 seconds damage control activation time. Advanced large cannon operation bonus will give you plus 6% large cannon damage, minus 5% large cannon activation time. Advanced Battleship command bonus will give you plus 7.5% large cannon tracking speed and plus 7.5% large cannon accuracy follow-up. Overall, pretty solid stats. The ship has 2 drones, 8 high slots, 4 medium slots, 6 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs, a pretty decent cargo hold capacity, overall pretty solid defense. The Machariel can be both a shield or armor tank, depends which one you prefer. I personally use the shield tank on this ship, although the armor tank can be good as well. The capacitors on paper look pretty nice, but if you are going to use the Machariel as a active tank, you will notice that the capacitor cannot keep up with the shield boosters or armor repairs. Can lock a target, has a very small signature radius, but overall that is to be expected with angel ships. The Machariel is actually pretty quick for a battleship. It's one of the fastest faction battleships in the game. The only ship that's faster with the micro overdrive is the Nestor because of the low mass, but the warp speed and warp acceleration is comparable with a cruiser because of the excellent roll bonus that the Machariel has. Now let me show you something that I also have for this ship. I have one of the, I think it's a rare skin, a permanent rare skin on the Machariel. I got this skin as a gift from my friend in my old corporation, and to this day I still have the same skin on this ship. I think it looks pretty good. Let me just show you the name. It's the Heartbreaker skin, was available I think for a limited time on the Valentine's Day 2 years ago. And well, I still have the skin on this ship 2 years after. And honestly, it looks really good. Back in the day I used the Machariel only for PvE, but now I actually have plans to use this ship in PvP. Now this is my PvP setup for the Machariel. Basically, I don't have tank on this ship, only DPS. I'm using C-type large autocannons with triple scramblers and 1 web. I think I use faction drones on this ship because I used to use the drones for missions, but now the same drones will be used for PvP as well. Let me quickly get 1 predator web. Okay, that's much better now. 1 micro drive, adaptive shield, invulnerability field, 1 damage control, and triple gyro stabilizers. I actually like to use the Machariel in this way because the Machariel doesn't have a pretty good capacitor for active tanking. It requires a lot of very good rigs, very good capacitor rigs in order to make the ship's capacitor pretty solid. So the easier way is to go with full DPS, which I use for PvP. This is another build that I want to test out with the quad gyro stabilizers. This is a build that I like to use on the Apocalypse Striker, and a build that actually works really well so far. Of course, the shield resistances will be low, but you will have a lot of DPS. And of course 18 seconds is the activation time. The plus 5 seconds from the roll bonus can be a lifesaver. Every second in EVE matters. Although this ship is a hit and run ship, so it's not really built to withstand a lot of damage. You can also use a afterburner instead of a micro updrive, but I personally prefer to use the micro updrive in order to quickly approach the target, because remember, the Machariel is pretty quick. As for the rigs, I don't have rig integrations at the moment. I know, surprising. I think a lot of you expected to see rig integration slapped on this ship, but I did build this ship a long time ago and I practically did not change the rigs that much. Almost 3000 DPS with this current build, which is pretty good. With a more tanky build, the DPS will of course be a little bit lower, but the ship's resistances will be higher. This is a build that I did test out with tank rigs, but the issue that I found with the Machariel is the capacitor. The ship can theoretically tank a lot of damage, but it's limited by the small capacitor. So if you really want to use the Machariel as a tank with a tanky build, then I personally recommend that you improve the capacitors. I would say around 20,000 to 25,000 capacitors should be enough in order to maintain a build like this, but that requires some pretty expensive rigs. But it works, and this is one of the downsides on this ship. Now, 64, 68, 76 and 80% resistances with this current build. With the damage control active, that should be much higher. 88, 89, 92 and 93 for 18 seconds, which can be very important if you are in a fight. Afterburner speed is almost 500 meters per second, which is okay. Can be a lot faster.
Docking request accepted.
Now let me quickly dock and show you a different build that I will use on the Machariel. Basically, you can replace the shield booster with another adaptive shield hardener, or you can actually use a reactive shield hardener, which can help against lasers, can help against railguns, and also can help against drone boats, which use one drone type. Now let me show you the active resistances with this build.
Undocking.
Now the capacitor is actually lasting a little bit longer, because after all the shield boosters take a lot of capacitor, so it's not surprising that the capacitor will not last for a very long time. 71, 74, 81 and 84, which is actually pretty good, and the capacitors last 10 minutes and 9 seconds with dual Nosferatus, which actually is pretty good. I'm very happy with this current result, and with the right tank build, with the right engineering rigs, the capacitor can actually be cap stable, which again is very important if you want to fly this ship as a active tank. With the damage control active, 90, 91, 93 and 95% resistances, which means if you go for a full tank, then you can easily get the shield resistance
accepted.
up to 90% with the damage control inactive, and that is actually pretty tanky. Now you can also replace the damage control with one capacitor battery, because I know a lot of pilots don't like the current damage control that we have in the game because it doesn't last very long, but again, it's pretty good if you have to use it in a emergency situation or in hit and run operations, which angel ships are actually pretty good at. And of course the cold base resistance will be a little bit lower because the damage control did add a little bit. Now this is the build that I personally like to use with this ship. It's actually pretty good, very fun. And so far I did have a couple fights with the Machariel I think in the last 2 days. I started to use this ship for PvP a lot more actively, and with the results I'm actually very happy. I'm actually very happy with the results, not really complaining about anything. For the idea that I have, it works really well, and very soon you will see the Machariel in PvP use. This is basically a introduction to the Machariel, as I like to do with all of my previous ships. You can also play around with the 2 extra slots that you have. You can use a damage control, you can use adaptive shield harness, you can even use shield extenders or armor plates, whichever you prefer. In my case, I prefer 1 adaptive and 1 damage control. So far that combination has been working really well. Okay, well, let me show you the active DPS of this Machariel. That's one thing that I almost forgot to do. So I have undocked, and now let's check out with 1 gyro stabilizer, 3,200. With the second gyro stabilizer, 3,500, almost 3,600, and with the third one, it's almost 3,900, 3,862.79 to be more accurate. And that's actually really nice, because I am still working on the skills. Will most likely reset some skills that I don't use, and will most likely improve the DPS. My goal is around 5,000 DPS with this ship. I also have this nanocore that I might decide to level up. So overall, very solid DPS for the current skills, and the DPS will only get higher from this moment. Now let me go and equip the 4th gyro stabilizer, just to see what's the maximum possible DPS with that build. Of course, maximum possible DPS with my current skills. Again, I am actively improving them, and I think by the end of this week it should be ready. We'll most likely reset the skills that I don't use, and that will improve the DPS of the Machariel quite a bit. Okay, let's undock and let's check out the active DPS once all damage mods have been activated. Let me quickly adjust the modules. Okay. With 1 gyro stabilizer, the DPS is 3,300. Okay. With the second one, the DPS is 3,700. With the third one, the DPS is 4,000. Alright, nice. And with the last one, the DPS is 4,158.77. And I'm actually very happy with the current result. Should be enough to shoot down most ships that I engage with the Machariel. Now the main issue will be the tank, but I have the 18 seconds of pretty good resistances on this ship. 72, 75, 81 and 85 should buy me enough time to destroy the target. Okay, now let me dock, let me prepare the ship, and then I can go out and let's see how the Machariel performs. Now, like I said before, I will do PvP with this ship. I'm working on a PvP roam video with the Machariel. Should be ready in couple days. Basically, I need to destroy enough ships first. That's basically how it all starts. Alright, so I have adjusted my build to run couple encounters just to see how it will perform. Previously I had around, I think, 2,200 cold DPS on the Machariel, but since then I have improved this ship a little bit, so it should clear missions a little bit faster than before. I did play the Machariel in nullsec back in the day, almost 2 years ago at this moment, and it did run really well. This ship was basically a Black Ops project for... This ship was basically a Black Ops project in my old corporation. At the time, battleships were not released. The highest tier was, I think, tier 7. And we already had a lot of materials, we already had basically everything. On the release, we found a blueprint pretty quickly. Not really sure how that happened, but it did. And within the next couple hours, couple days, the ship was made. It was decided that I be the pilot for the ship, because at the time I had the best battleship skills. And since then, this ship was in my hands, and it's still in active use. So it has a pretty nice history. I have some really nice memories with Machariel, with this exact ship. So that's why I really like Fly it. Now I can tell you that the DPS improvement is quite noticeable, and of course the balance patch has to play a big role in that as well, because basically all the damage mods have been reworked, and they now give a higher passive effect. So the overall cold DPS is, of course, higher, while the active DPS is a little bit lower, but in the end I noticed a significant increase in DPS on all of my ships, which is not a bad thing. I personally would prefer to have the damage mods completely passive, and I did mention this back in April, but I think we are slowly moving towards that, which means that in the next couple months there's a big chance that the damage mods lose their active effect completely, which would make them a passive module, which would make them quite similar to the EVE Online damage mods. But so far, the Machariel is a very good PvE ship. Now if you want to buy a Machariel to run missions with it, you can do that. It's one of the best PvE ships that I know. Before using the Apocalypse Striker, I used the Machariel and it was running really well. Basically this ship was my PvE ship, while the Apocalypse Striker was a PvP ship. Although now all of my ships are PvP ships, the Machariel included. It's really fun to use this ship in LoLsec, and I think this is the only faction battleship, and overall one of the only battleships that I feel comfortable to use in LoLsec, because it's actually pretty fast in warp. It moves like a cruiser, so I don't have to be worried about warping too soon or too late. In most cases too late, from personal experience, because this thing is pretty quick and it has the warp speed of a cruiser, which makes it highly maneuverable, and you can reach the destination, or you can actually reach your target very quickly. And I think that's the main selling point of Angel ships. They are pretty fast, they have pretty good DPS, and they work really well in a fleet. I think Angel ships are... It almost feels like Angel ships were meant to be used in a fleet. The Cinnabal works in a similar way, although the Cinnabal can be an active tank. You can make the Cinnabal a armor or shield tank. I would actually prefer the Cinnabal with a armor tank because it's actually very easy on the capacitor. You can make the Cinnabal really tanky with dual armor repairs while maintaining a pretty solid capacitor stability. And I think it's actually possible to do the same thing with the Machariel. I haven't tried out a armor tank Machariel. However, I did fight a couple of them. And, well, of course, most of them were destroyed, but I think a pretty solid armor tank Machariel can be a really good opponent. So that's one of the things that I will have to test out. Now, the Machariel used to be very cheap. I remember the price dropped to as low as 1.5 to 2 billion. Now let me quickly check the price of the Machariel. Well, now it's 4 billion. Very interesting. So the price for this ship actually increased. Okay, well that's surprising. Usually angel ships are the cheapest faction ships. Not really sure why that was the case, but when I was buying my first Cinnabal, I got the ship for 3.5 billion, I believe, while the Phantasm was at 5 billion. The Ashmo was at 6, I believe, or 6 or 4 or 4.5 billion. The Gila was 5 billion, but for some reason the Citadel was the cheapest one, and I think it still is the cheapest one. Not really following the prices of faction ships. And the same thing was also applicable on the faction battleships. But now the things have changed a little bit because the Rattlesnake is now the cheapest one. Not really sure why, but yeah, that's what happened. Okay, back to the mission over here. So far, as you can see, based on the capacitor, it's not really that stable with one Nosferatu. Although I use dual webs and a scrambler just to be able to hold frigates and fast ships. The Machariel is one of those faction ships and faction battleships that doesn't have to worry about one Ortus, because this ship can hit the Ortus even without tracking computers. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention, you can use the Machariel with tracking computers. It works really well for defense. I remember engaging one Machariel with my Ortus and I barely survived because they did use a couple of tracking computers. And once the Machariel starts to hit you, it most likely will kill you if you try to engage it. So one of the more difficult ships to engage at medium to long range distances. For close range, the Machariel can use webs, scrubbers and neutralizers as defense. With dual webs, it should be enough to hold most frigates and most tackle ships. Basically, what you need to do is web and scramble them. If you have a neutralizer, then that will help as well, but never orbit small ships. Always keep at range, or in this case, the approach command can be used as the keep at range command. That way, you will ensure that the turrets will hit the target. I know from my personal experience, a lot of pilots that end up panicking once they have been tackled or engaged, tend to try and orbit their target, which really doesn't help unless the target is big, like battlecruiser, battleships, cruisers, things like that. But against small ships, or against ships that are at a close range from you, the orbit will not help. In that case, you have to keep at range. That way, if you manage to web and scramble the target, if you slow them down enough, then you can easily hit them with the old cannons, because it has some pretty good tracking. And of course, tracking computers help a lot in that aspect. I'm talking from my personal experience. I did tackle a lot of Machariels, and trust me, I don't want to tackle a Machariel with the Orcus. I always have a bad feeling that something bad will happen to the ship. Sometimes it almost happens, so yeah. If you fight the Orcus, be very careful around Machariels, because these things have teeth, and trust me, they're not afraid to use them. As for missions, well, the same thing applies. Small ships keep at range, big ships you can orbit, but you can also keep at range. The afterburner for missions is very useful, especially if you have a lot of webs for slowing down targets. You can actually even use a triple web setup, triple webs and a scrambler. That should be enough to slow down most frigates. And in most cases you'll have more speed than the tackle ship, which means the tackle ship will be dead very quickly. Okay, I think this might be the last ship of the mission. I'm very excited to see what type of targets I get with the Machariel. This is one of the, like I said before, one of the only ships that I feel comfortable in to use in low-sec, because it's fast. The previous ships, the previous battleships that I used in low-sec weren't that, fast, and I wasn't really enjoying flying them in low-sec because they were a big, easy target. The Machariel, while being a big target, is not slow, and in a lot of cases, speed is going to save your ship. Although I still find it highly hilarious that the Nestor is faster than the Machariel with the microwave. The Nestor that I did fly a while ago could reach 3.2 kilometers per second before the April balance patch. I actually forgot how quick it goes after the patch, but before the patch, yeah, that thing was going as fast as a Phantasm with a large afterburner. It was ridiculous. So, yeah, the fastest battleship with the microwave or afterburner is definitely the Nestor. However, the Machariel is at the second place. I will have to jump in the Nestor again to actually see how fast it goes after the patch, because I actually forgot. But I think it goes still around 2.5 to 3,000 2.5 to 3,000 meters per second. I almost said kilometers per second. 3,000 kilometers per second. That's a little bit too fast for my taste. Too fast for this game, okay? But yeah, the Nestor is ridiculous fast. It has the slowest base velocity, but it's ridiculous with the microwave. So yeah, overall, very interesting stuff indeed. And let me quickly shoot down this Dominix. This Machariel has some pretty good ISK per hour stats. After all, I used to fly this ship exclusively for missions, so I was already expecting pretty good clear times. It's very close to the Vindicator, but again I think that you should not notice a big difference, honestly. If you have good skills for the Machariel, then you should clear missions without a problem. That's again from my personal experience in flying this ship for the last like 2 years. So overall, very happy with the Machariel, and I'm very glad that I still have the ship even after 2 years. Overall, a very beautiful ship. Design-wise, it's one of the prettiest ships in the game, and of course, one of the most fun to fly ships that I currently have. Alright, well, that will be it for the Machariel's introduction. I did show you some of the builds that I like to use, and I showed you some of the modules that I use. And next time when I return with the Machariel, it will be time for PvP. So very excited to see what targets I get with this ship. So with that being said, hope you enjoyed, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.